so different.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, my We Are Not So Different family. Thank you so much for spending another morning with me for another episode of We Are Not So Different. This morning's guest we have with us Miss Chrissy Kyles. How are you, Miss Chrissy?
Doing fine. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you. I think we have a lot of in common during the season, so I feel like we'll be able to have some good chatter. So I'll give you guys a little bit of background about Miss Chrissy. Chrissy is a higher education professional with 4 years experience in student affairs. She currently works in career services full time by day, but also has worked in federally funded grant programs, Gear Up Diversity and Inclusion. By evening/weekend, she is the host of Bliss with Chris podcast, which focuses on college careers, social justices. She's been podcasting for about 9 months and enjoys being able to use her platform to empower others in sharing their stories and educating listeners. And there is not a more righteous cause to use a platform, Miss Lady. That is it. Empowering others, yes. Educating others, yes. Yes, ma'am. Click, click. So, y'all know the drill. Go ahead and find your favorite spot on the couch. Get your favorite drink, whether it's Kool-Aid or Cavassier. Snuggle in and get ready. Yes, I said it. Kool-Aid or Cavassier. And just get into with this conversation. So, Miss Chrissy, I ask all my guests the same question, and you get the same treatment. So,
Okay.
first question. If you had the undivided attention of an audience of your choosing, who would said audience be, and what would you tell them?
Yes, definitely young adults. And I know I talk about college a lot, but I recognize that not everyone goes straight to college, after high school. So I would say young adults because no matter if you go to college or not, you still are going to probably go through the same
A young
struggles.
adult, right?
So, and that particular age group is my favorite because, well, for one, I'm 28, so I'm kind of ending my 20s, but I just remember feeling like there's so much going on in your 20s. You're trying to start your life, your family, your career. Like, that's a lot. So, that would be my audience.
Okay. She's like, that was my audience. What would you tell them?
Man, I think what happens a lot is that we feel like, oh, we should be at this certain place before we turn 30. But in reality, we have to stop like saying, oh, I should be X, Y, and Z because you are where you're meant to be right now in this moment.
Yes, ma'am. And you know what? I'm thinking about it, and there are a lot of transitions that happen in the 20s, man. Depending on if you went to college directly after high school, you're transitioning into college, then you're transitioning out of college, maybe transitioning into a master's program, or maybe transitioning directly into your career. And like you said, some people are getting married, some people are having children. You're learning that's a lot.
Yes,
That is
yes.
a lot. And then if you add on that whole comparison thing, man, comparison kills. Oh Lord, if I knew what I knew, what I know now when I was back then, like, yeah, there's no rush, man. Just live. I wish people could just, yeah, that's something. Just live, man, and everything's
Yeah.
gonna be all right. Goodness gracious. Okay, cool. So, if you had the opportunity to speak with a younger version of yourself, like let's say like 4 or 5 year old Chrissy, what would little Chrissy need to hear?
I know this sounds cliche, but I felt like I even then sort of had the idea of being in education like as an adult. But
Okay.
no, I would say it was probably just because that's all I was exposed to was school. Like, what else are you doing at 4 or 5 year old besides like school,
Okay.
daycare, or whatever? Um, and of course, what my parents did. Both my parents served in the Air Force. So outside of those occupations, I really didn't really know too many other jobs. Um, But I mean, I even remember just my earliest teachers and just how sweet they were, and like how they were in the job because they truly wanted to be and they cared about their students. So while I never would have known clearly about higher education as a 4 or 5 year old, but
Yeah.
being an educator. So I guess I would just say there were times when I kind of tried to steer away from that because um, it would be discouraging, later on in life when you hear, oh, teachers don't get paid enough for
Right.
the work that they do. So I would just instill in little Chrissy, stick with education because that's what's going to make you happy at the end of the day.
Oh, yay. And it does. It takes a special kind of person to be a teacher, man, especially with the little kids. Well, I guess the big kids too, because the big kids, they got full grown attitudes and full grown
Right.
mouths. And
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. Yeah. God bless you. I don't want no parts. God bless your ministry. Mhm. Okay, so you are an educator. You are your focus is college careers and social justice. So I guess the similarity that I spoke of earlier was I work for a college institution as well, and I'm in student care services under student development. So I feel like we have a lot of things in common, and we'll be able to like identify on a lot of different issues. But specifically, your focus, I can only imagine the uptick of the need for a certain set of skills that you possess during this season as it pertains to the country's current climate. So what are some of the struggles that you see increasing this year? And can I ask specifically as it pertains to people of color?
Yes. What I'm seeing specifically with students of color, first of all, I don't know if it's more of a um, this new generation that is coming up and getting ready to enter the workforce, or some of them are already in the workforce. But Gen Z, I feel like they are more vocal and not afraid to share their opinion. So
Okay.
what I'm seeing specifically with students of color right now is just they're tired of things like not being said that need to be said, right?
All
So
right.
uh,
They're feeling the angst of previous generations and like enough.
and they're being vocal about it. So I know, especially when back in last summer with all the civil unrest, that's hard just as a person of color myself, like seeing that and then like having to pretend like it didn't happen and go on through my workday. But these students are like, no, like, what are we doing at our institutions to make sure that this doesn't happen here?
Girl, yes. Yes.
So that's what I'm seeing is more they're using their voices and they're not afraid to.
That's good, right? And that's something that, I myself have found struggle doing with, the meetings that are being had. And then maybe you're like one of the only persons of color in the meeting. And then the non-people of color, they're asking questions that are not directed at you, but kind of like expected for you to answer.
Mhm.
And
Some days you're just tired and you're like, I don't have it in me today.
I don't like seriously. And sometimes I get angry and like I don't feel like affirming your feelings today. So my tendency is to withdraw, which is probably not the most healthy way to do it. But maybe I need some of the energy of these new generations. So I could be like, look, this is what it is, and this is what it ain't. Oh man, okay. So I guess same question as it pertains to people who are not of color. Like I'm sure we're seeing the same thing on the other side because we do have some allies on the other side, bless the Lord, that are more vocal and willing to tell their old grandma and grandpa, look. So yeah, same question, I guess, for people who are not of color.
Yeah, I'd extend the same answer, but I'd also say students, I feel like any student, they are feeling somewhat isolated, especially right now with COVID, I think. And I can share that I think they're more concerned with mental health, access to mental health resources. Like we have counseling at our campus, but for some reason, students feel like the services are not available. So they're saying like, oh, it's hard to get in with counseling because they have a wait list, but counseling's coming back and saying like, no, we don't actually have a wait list. Like, I don't know what so there's like this disconnect of information. But to be fair, we have about 3 different counseling centers on campus. So we don't know if students are like calling the other
Which
ones.
one? Okay.
So I think it's just students feel like they're not being supported, but there's like a disconnect between like the actual like navigating the process of the university because it's a bigger institution. So I don't know where like how to like begin to like fix that bridge, but I think that happens across a lot of institutions across the world.
I can imagine. Now I am currently employed at a smaller private institution, and I know one of the ways that our office works, we will hold like yearly or semesterly meetings with the different healthcare facilities in the community. So it gives us all a chance to connect. So we all know. So we all have an idea of what each other does and what we're capable of. So that way we can kind of like center the student. And my next question that was going to tie into that, like how it has impacted the student body and the college experience. We are seeing a lot of issues as it pertains to mental health. But like I said, we are a smaller private institution where you are, I'm sure you probably quadruple our student body. So it's like, that's a lot to deal with. Like, is your office big and do you feel like you have enough, can I say backup to handle what's currently being thrown at you?
So kind of the I guess the con of working at a larger institution is we have so many counterparts across campus. Like for example, I work in career services in an office of 2 other people, but with each college has their own career services people. So it's like mini repeat organization, just like with the counseling center. Like I said, there's like university counseling, which is like kind of the main hub. But then there's 2 other clinics, and the 2 other clinics are they're either master's or doctoral level graduate students that are studying counseling. So like when you have so many like similar sounding offices, it gets confusing really quick. I be getting confused even, and I work there, and I'm like,
it's like I work for y'all, and I'm confused.
So if I'm confused, I can only imagine like what the students are doing. So I think that's where some of the probably the feelings of not being supported are coming from, because they don't even know which one to go to, you know what I mean? So but specifically I would say depression and anxiety. I think that's kind of a common trend even before COVID, but it's definitely increased the last year. Sadly, suicide among college age students, I think it's a trend, honestly, across the nation as a result of going to college during the pandemic, you know? So those are the top 3, I would say, mental health challenges college students are facing right now.
Okay. And you know, you're 100% right. I'm totally on board with what you're saying. And you spoke of suicide. Now, suicide ideation was a term that I had never even heard of prior to coming to where I'm currently employed. Mental health is no joke. Like, not saying that it ever was before, but I guess my eyes have been open to like the ins and outs, the goings of like students and dealing with how to cope with certain aspects of just life. Um, And I remember in our previous conversation, you said you grew up in church where, they believe you could just pray it away. And I grew up in church as well. So when you said that, I felt that in my shando. and no diss to the church, because I'm an advocate of prayer and I know the power of prayer and I know that God can. I also know that he can use medical facilities and doctors to facilitate healing as well. So you said that you've seen an uptick in instances of depression and such like that. Um, it's difficult. Like, were you guys online or remote last semester, or did you guys stay open the entire time?
We were kind of a mix, but to be honest, most of the classes were online. They tried to keep freshmen in the classroom as much as possible because so that they could have like a little bit of a normal college experience.
Yeah.
But I would say once by October, even if classes were originally in person, a lot of them just moved to online because it just made more sense because 3 students were showing up to class in person.
Right.
Everyone else was on Zoom. So we started off hybrid, but then it was mostly online.
Okay. Yeah, so we went like directly to remote. So and almost immediately we started hearing, feedback about feeling isolated. And technically you are, right? Because if you're coming from out of state or from overseas, and now you thought that you're going to have this great experience, but now you're forced to stay within your dorm room and limit your contact with others as much as humanly possible, which the college students don't pay attention, but that's not a newsflash.
Right.
But to go from basically having complete freedom to do whatever you should so desire to, okay, now I have to stay in my dorm room. And even classes, I don't get to have like human touch or human contact. I can imagine how that can be a lonely experience for anyone. But certainly, if you'd like to elaborate on how that and other things, outside influences, have impacted the, I want to say, uptick, I can say that I've noticed at my institution in cases of mental health issues, suicide ideation. Like, we just started the semester late January. The students have not even come onto campus yet. They start next week, but we've already had reports of hospitalization. So that, I think that goes to show you just how deeply ingrained this pandemic has affected the mental state of our students. And I'm speaking for mine, but you can speak for yours.
Yeah. Just looking back in my own life, and I think this can kind of mirror the college students. We went through a lot last year and we're still like in this pandemic. So COVID, of course, is a stressor. College itself is stressful already. So then throw in another stressor, COVID. Um, and we had so many disruptions between you either we're going back and forth between virtual or in person. So anytime you make such a quick like change like that, and especially as many times as some institutions have, that's stressful enough. Then we had all of the civil unrest back over the summer, so that was like another stressor, and depending on your identity, that could have impacted you even more. Um, so I think just all these kind of transitional stressors is what is causing this uptick of like anxiety and depression, because I feel like if you don't have a stress response built in already, meaning like a self-care plan, I guess I should say more so than stress response, then that could take a toll on you. You know what I mean? So, and I don't think a lot of college students come into college thinking about how am I going to take care of myself, So I would say with a number of events that have happened in the past year and not having built-in self-care skills can definitely affect your mental health.
Oh yeah. And I like how you use yourself as an example. Because I'm thinking about it, like, I'm sure that you were inundated with Zoom meetings and maybe Microsoft Teams, now that Skype is like being phased out, all these different meetings, you constantly in somebody's face and somebody constantly in your face. And I know for me, I was like, even to this day, I'd be like, if I got to look at this computer screen for one more for one more meeting that could have been an email. So yeah, and that's coming from somebody like I have 40 years of experience to withdraw off of. I know when that stress is starting to jack up, and I know when I need to unplug. And you're right, the students that are coming in, they're not coming in built with that. Well, some, I can't speak for all, but they're not coming in like built with the skills to navigate stress. Like, and
Right.
some don't even recognize what stress in their lives looks like until it's too late, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, if you're fresh out of high school, you've had stress in high school, but
Mhm.
you kind of had like mentors, whether they were your teacher or your family, to like actually kind of help guide you through that process. But once you're on your own, like you have to kind of go through stuff alone to be able to build your self-care plan and even recognize, when you're starting to feel stressed.
Yeah. So one thing you spoke of before, imposter syndrome. Can you explain what that is to the listeners and watchers today?
Yeah. So the way I define it is that you are not able to like internalize your accomplishments, meaning the things that you worked hard for, you dismiss them because you feel like you were either a fake or a fraud. That's where the imposter comes from. And so, like, for example, you could win an award, like, I don't know, employee of the month, even. We'll do something trivial. But then you're like, oh, well, they gave me this award because I'm nice, or I'm like this, or this. Like, you don't own that you won the award. So, um, it's a term that I didn't learn about until I was in grad school, actually, because it happens a lot with grad level professionals, grad school students, I should say. Um, but the reason I like talking about it is because, like, we all like have had feelings of imposter syndrome, but we might not just recognize it. And so, just calling it out what it is, like I always say, don't think about the qualifiers, think about the facts. So instead of, oh, I won this award because they thought I was nice, take out that last part and just say, I won this award.
That's
Like, because that's a
exactly it.
fact. That's a
Yeah.
fact.
You know what? And now that I'm thinking about it, it's like, is it just like that implies to everyone, not just students, right? Because I'm
Right.
like, I don't know, why do we do that? Like, why come we can't just, I said, why come, not how come. Why come we just can't accept a compliment? Why come we can't accept recognition? I don't know. I don't know. And is that something that, I don't know if you can answer this question, is that something that you see more in the lines of women, or is it like equal across like genders?
I think women are more open about talking about it. But it could
Yeah.
happen. It could happen to anyone. But I think we as women sometimes, just the nature of the many hats that we wear, sometimes I think it can be more of an issue because we might be excelling, in our work life, but then like our like children's life, we might not feel as, on top of things. So I think it's just, it manifests probably more eye-opening with women than men, maybe.
Okay. While we're on women, I know another thing you spoke about was the Black superwoman syndrome. And I would like you to take your time and explain all that good stuff. I know, but you said that it goes back to slavery, raising our children and slave owners' children and stuff like that. But when you speak about it, it's like it's an eye opener because it's like, man, like these are some of the same things that I walk in. Like, I'm not, proud to admit that, but at least I can identify it now. So what is Black Superwoman syndrome?
Yeah, I mean, it does stem back from slavery days. Black women were, um, expected to take care of their slave owner's house, essentially. So they were cooking, cleaning, rearing the
Yeah.
slave owner's children on top of their own family. So it's like they were taking care of they were taking care of two families at once, two households at once. So fast forward post-slavery, that mentality just doesn't go away, overnight. And so I think specifically as Black women, we tend to take on so much responsibility because of that. Because that wasn't too many generations ago.
No, it wasn't.
So we're expected to do all of the things and also not show emotion while going through that. Like, we're expected to be just super women. That's where the super woman part comes in with that. But sometimes, like, you can only handle so much. Again, like, if you're doing all of this and not showing any emotion and repressing your emotion, that in itself could lead to depression and anxiety. So I think now that we are catching on, and there's research being done about the Black superwoman syndrome, and recognizing that, I look forward to future generations not having to go through that same thing, hopefully, as more research is put out about it.
Yeah. Learning how to recognize it, and then recognize if that's something that you're walking in. And then if so, how do I get out of it? How do I reverse that? How do I heal that? Because and you're right. I don't know what it is. I mean, I can only speak for myself. Why we feel like we can't express that emotion. And I don't know if it has anything. I might be reaching here, but you know how there's this whole angry Black woman stereotype. And it's like, oftentimes in my career, I have found myself walking on eggshells, because if you show any kind of assertiveness, it's not even aggression. It's just, I'm assertive. I do my job. I like to do it well, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna perform. I'm gonna excel. But if you show that, then it's like you're automatically seen as competition. You're seen as the protagonist. You're seen as the angry Black woman. So then, instead of continuing in that line of, assertiveness, you kind of dim down, or you kind of like, okay, let me cover up to like not show that. Like you were saying, you don't express that. And it's debilitating, and it's frustrating, and it's all the words that you can attribute to that feeling of, dang, I can't even shine. I just want to do me. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I don't think you're reaching, because I think of it, especially at work. I feel like you are walking on eggshells, because you're like, okay, do I want to be more? I say assertive, but then it's like, okay, are they gonna look at me as the angry Black woman if I am assertive? But then if I don't say anything, am I being authentic and true to myself? And also, am I perpetuating not the stereotype, perpetuating the system that has, oppressed people of color? So it's just like, you have to kind of pick and choose.
Oh my gosh. It's mental work, man. It's taxing. It's a constant battle. And then I think about that. And like I said, I'm 42 years old. So I got a lot of, experience to go on. But then I think about those who are coming into college that do not have that well of experience to withdraw from. They do not have the wherewithal. So if my feelings of, I need to shrink down to make sure that my counterparts find me more palatable, it's causing me to be like, right. I can only imagine what a student who definitely does not have the authority, like as it pertains to speaking to a professor or speaking to someone, I guess, considered higher than. So they don't have the authority. They don't have the wit or the experience or the wherewithal. They don't have any of that. And here they are trying to deal with these thoughts, this mental legwork and emotion, and trying to verbalize it in a manner that does not, for lack of better terminology, incriminate them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot. And I know one of the things you spoke about, and I don't know if this is it can come it can come right alongside that. You spoke of the impact of trauma, intergenerational and what race-based trauma, and how it impacts college students during the college experience. All of this is wrapped up in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So as a professional, what are you seeing? Like, what does that look like? In addition, I guess, to what we just described, but coming from a college level, a college student, or even in your work experience, what does it look like? How are students coping? And what can we do as professionals and as, um, what can students do who are currently wrapped up in all this? What do we do? I'm like, give us the answer, Chrissy. Give us the answer. No pressure.
Oh, well, when I look at where I'm from, Oklahoma, we have um, a lot of people that have what's called traverse childhood experiences.
Okay.
Um, Oklahoma is, I can't remember where we rank, but we're in the top 10 for domestic violence.
Oh wow.
We also have a high number of children in the foster care system. And so when I think about just trauma as it pertains to people from Oklahoma, I'm like, you just never know someone's backstory. Um, so that's what I think about with when it comes to generational trauma. To be honest, I want to do more research in my graduate program in mental health counseling on more generational trauma and how that impacts students, not only when they get to college, but throughout their college experience. So more research to be done on that.
Okay.
So we also have a high number of students that are from they're the first in their family. I'm not saying this is traumatic, but they're the first in their family to go to college. So first gen.
It can be.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
You know what? I would take that back because sometimes it's traumatic going through the experience of feeling like you're abandoning your family by going to college.
Yep.
And so students are balancing like, okay, I know that college will make my life better after I finish, but it's the whole process of getting through that 4 or 5 years
Yeah.
and feeling like I'm putting my family on the back burner. So
Yeah.
like that in itself is traumatic.
Absolutely.
So there's that. And so some of these families are also low income families. So sometimes it's a matter of a student maybe dropping out to go work full time temporarily and then trying to get back into the university. But then like that's a battle in itself. Like, okay, I was making good money when I was not in school versus do I go to school and kind of delay the gratification of making a decent income for a couple years. So it's like there's
It's
a
a
lot of
battle.
decisions that students are faced with today. So as far as what we could do to help, I think it's just a matter of we don't have to know all of the things about all of these different traumatic experiences, but I feel like, especially those working in education, they need to show up at these trainings and professional developments more than to just to check off the box that I did it, but like be intentional about listening and at least know the resources so that at least, you know, if a student that needs a particular resources, you don't have to answer it for them. You could say, let me direct you to this person or this
Yeah.
company. So I would just say, knowing your resources, trying to learn more about the different traumatic experiences. And honestly, I think part of it is just students want someone to like listen to them and kind of be their advocate, because I think with college students, sometimes it's not about you knowing the answer for them. It's like listening and also like pointing them in the right direction.
Gotcha. And I feel that. That's a word that my boss uses a lot. Advocate, advocate. And she does it well. I won't lie. I'll give her that prop. So career development, that's an area that you're working in, right?
Yes.
So I wish that this was something that would have been more focused on when I was in school. Not knocking my alma mater, love them. I'm just saying. So, because sometimes you need guidance, like you said, the students don't necessarily want us to figure it out, but sometimes they need a sounding board, because a lot of times if they're talking, they'll be able to talk it out with, just someone to properly guide them or whatever. Explain your role in in career development and the importance of your role in it.
Yes. So I've been in career development now for a year and a half. Love it. It's everything from resume and cover letter development. I help with mock interview preparation. But my favorite part of the job is, we call them career consultations, which is basically, it's kind of like career counseling, but we call them consultations because we're not licensed professional counselors. But those conversations are my favorite because it is the student, like, kind of like you're their sounding board. So they might come in either like stuck between two career pathways, or they might not even know where to start in the first place. So those are my favorite because I think the conversations are deeper than what I could do with students like in a resume or mock interview. You can only get so deep with those appointments. But as far as the importance of career development, at the end of the day, I feel like I'm kind of in the middle ground. At the end of the day, students are in college to get a career after they finish. Yes. So I feel like the connecting point between their student development, because, you do want to have fun while you're in college, but also the end goal and helping them get to their end goal of graduating and having a career after they graduate.
Yeah, definitely. Man, and like I said, I wish that's something that would have been more focused on when I was in school. And I don't know, maybe they did have it, and that's just a service that I did not take advantage of, because I noticed that as a lot. College students do that a lot. Well, even adults, we all do it, right? We don't necessarily take advantage of the resources that we have before us. So I think that's awesome.
I think what happens is that people don't take advantage of resources until they realize that they need it. So a lot of times we'll see seniors come in when they're ready to graduate and find a job. And it's like, oh, we could have helped you like your whole 4 years, but it is what it is. But they don't recognize the need for it until like it's time to use it.
Well, better late than never, I guess. I mean, right. But yeah, we could have set you up for, a much better. I get it. So I know another thing that we spoke about was food insecurity. And I guess I'm so naive. Ugh, I'm too grown to be like this, but I guess I never really considered that being an issue for students that live on campus, because you think, well, you're on campus, and if you're on campus, that means you have a meal plan and stuff, right? Or am I being naive once again? But anyway, can you explain exactly what food insecurity is and its impact on students/campus?
Yeah. So food insecurity is essentially the lack of access to food, but not because it's not there, but more so like economic reasons, or you might live in like a food desert. We have what's called a food desert in Oklahoma City, in like the lower income. There's not any grocery stores. Yeah, in the zip code, and most people that live in that side of town don't have access to transportation to go outside. So that's it's a whole different ballgame. But anyways, as it pertains to college students, when I think about, even if you have a meal plan, food is expensive on campus because you use your meal plan on campus only, right? It's not like you could just go to like McDonald's and swipe your meal. So I feel like you could live on campus and still like be food insecure if you run out of your, meal plan too early. But another thing is most college students eat, fast food because the cost of groceries sometimes. And even if they wanted to cook for themselves, they might not have the time to, because between classes and like being involved and things like that, or they're still learning how to cook too sometimes.
Yep.
So I will share that I know where I live, we do have a food pantry called Our Daily Bread, and I can't remember if it was this semester or last semester, they recently started doing a mobile like walk up pantry that's like in the parking lot that they park in on campus. And so students don't even have to go to the pantry. The pantry essentially comes to the students.
I
So,
love that.
yeah, that's one thing that we've been doing for helping students have access to food.
Yeah. I was going to ask if you guys partner with different community resources and or venues that champion this cause, because it's real. And a lot of times, like I remember there was one instance where a young lady was basically not eating, and it wasn't until one of the professors reached out to student care services and saying, that they had seen some differences, going on with this young lady. And by the time uh, we were connected, we found out that she had basically been like surviving off of pretzels. And it's like there's a level of shame, there's a stigma that's associated with food insecurity, to where she didn't feel like she could reach out. And then when we were able to work something out and make something available, I think even then she was too ashamed to accept it, because it was like she didn't want to look like she was lesser than. And that was another that blew my mind, because I'm like, here is the help. This is literally what you need to survive. But because of the stigma that is associated with lack thereof, she was unable to accept it. And I think it might have a lot of, because it's a private institution where I work at. And when you think private institution, that means, ooh, somebody got money, right? So yeah, it really tugged at my heartstrings. And I was like, oh, like imagine being too ashamed to accept sustenance, like for you to continue to live. I don't know. It
Yeah.
really messed with me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So there is this one uh I don't want to call it an institution or organization, I'll say. It's called Goldfinch Cafe, and it's a pay what you can establishment. And I know there are several others. I know there's one in Colorado and in other places, but we are currently fundraising to bring one to Illinois, where I am. But it's literally to restore dignity to those who have been impacted by that stigma that is associated with food insecurity and lack thereof. But people will be able to come and literally pay what they can. So if you want to eat there, great, because you like the food, great, pay. If you can, pay. If you want to donate, donate. If you want to volunteer, volunteer. If you can't pay, then okay, still eat. But those are the kind of things that I'm thinking about when I'm asking, does your organization partner with different vendors and or organizations, so that way people do have a place where they're at peace or at ease and not afraid of looking like you're giving a handout to a poor person.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I even think about with the mobile food pantry. I think students feel more comfortable if they see other students
You know what? Yeah.
accepting donations, because it's just like, oh, they're a college student like me, and we both need food, so
Yes.
it's okay.
We in this. Oh my gosh. I just wish. Oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. That just tugs at my heartstrings, because I grew up poor and I know what it's like to eat a ketchup sandwich for dinner.
Wow.
So, yeah, that always, it's a tender spot with me.
Mhm.
So I know that you do, and I hear your puppy in the background, and I just want to be like, let him free. It's okay. We are not so different. We love puppies. Like
Oh.
you can let him free. Um, uh, Bliss with Chris. What started that?
Man, honestly, I started it as a blog when I was in my first full-time job ever, but I dealt with frustration on that job search because I felt like it took me long to get my first job out of college. So I was like, okay, I'm having all these feelings and I just need to get them out there. So I started the blog and just shared kind of my frustrations and just feelings to hopefully help other people that were going through the same thing that I was. So that was about 2.5 years ago now.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I've always wanted to do this podcast thing. So it evolved from a blog to a podcast. So the podcast started in April of 2020. My dog is like, y'all.
I love him though. It's okay. It's okay.
Like she's in jail or something.
We love puppies here.
Anyway, so I started the podcast and just talk about, that's why I like to talk about college and careers specifically, because that transition from college to your career is a lot. I think sometimes we glamorize like, oh, you're graduating, you have your bachelor's now, and the world's just going to open up to you. And it's like, no, that piece of paper does not guarantee you a career. And even if you do get a career, it might not be what you like dreamed of doing.
Hello.
At least not your first job.
Right.
So I just wanted to be like that real talk, like big sister, and
I love that.
share about you're building your career. And social justice has always just since I've been in higher ed now for a while, I've seen like just the various social justice issues that impact college students. So I always want to have a social justice minded show because, you know, things affect college students differently and it can make or break their experience, honestly.
Really? Mm-hmm. Agreed. Okay. So I want you to tell my listeners and watchers, hi y'all, where can they find you? Give us websites, social media handles, whatever you do. Where can, especially for my college students out there, those y'all transitioning in and or out of, where can they find you?
Yeah, my main website is Bliss with Chris, and Chris is actually with 2 S's, so CHRISS. So that's my main website. I would say Instagram is the social media platform that is my jam. That's where I would say most of my followers interact with me. I'm at Bliss with Chris on Instagram. I'm also the same on Twitter and Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well. If that's your thing, we can connect. My name is Christiana Kyles, and Christiana spelled CHRISTIANA, Kyles, KYLES. But that's where you can find me.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you for spending this morning with us. I understand that you're busy because I know what it's like running a podcast and a blog and all that good stuff. So I know that you're busy. And I want to thank you for spending your time with We Are Not So Different this morning. And tell Puppy we said hi.
I'm sure now she wants to be quiet now that she knows when. I swear she knows like when I'm about to be done working.
Right.
So,
that's hilarious.
I will tell her that.
All right. Well,
thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. All right, my We Are Not So Different family. Thank you for spending your time with us this morning. I love each and every one of y'all. Until next week, be kind to one another. Peace.
We are not so different.